Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. As promised, today I'll be painting some sketchbook covers. I already teased this one a bit in my last video, the Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook that last week's sketchbook tour was about. But during the week I decided to also paint two more sketchbooks, so let's get into it. I think we should still start with this one. I just took off the sleeve and glued it into the sketchbook, so I don't forget which one this is for when I want to buy it again. And then I grabbed my paper palette and some acrylic gouache. Now I want to paint some dried wilted flowers. Basically, I've been having this bouquet standing around for weeks, and I kept telling my boyfriend not to throw them away just yet, because they were just wilting in the most beautiful way. All of the petals stayed quite yellow, but they sort of shrunk and curled and twisted. I just think it looks so cool the way it is now. Now the other day I already drew a sketch of them using oil pastels, and I really like that sketch. And so I thought, why not just paint this on the sketchbook? I wanted to keep it a bit loose, and as you can see, I'm just using the paint really thickly. And I'm trying to get some variation in the lines, in the petals. So I'm not just using a yellow, but I also have a reddish brown and sort of a mustardy yellow-brown hue, as well as this super bright luminous red. And so I'm just starting by painting all the petals first. I sped some of this footage up for you. I'm trying to make sure not to add too many flowers, which I'm always tempted to. I want to keep this painting more graphic. And then I'm just adding the stalks of the flowers. Again, I used two different paints. I started with this sort of medium value olive, and then I added a brighter version of it on top while the paint was still wet. So it's not to cover up the other green, but just to add this painterly effect and to make the brush strokes more beautiful. And then I took out my ultramarine blue, which you know I love. One of my absolute favorite hues. And I wanted to try if it would work to basically paint the entire sketchbook background, except for the, what are they called? The centers of the flowers, which are black. And so you can see that I leave this part out, basically like a negative space painting. But other than that, I'm just filling the entire rest of the background in with this ultramarine blue. I'm trying to be relatively precise, but not to obsess about it. I think it looks better if you have some unpainted gap rather than painting on top of the foreground elements. Right now, this ultramarine paint still looks really dark, almost as dark as the sketchbook cover. But you will see that as it dries, it lightens up just a little bit. In the bottom right corner, you can already see that it gets a little bit brighter when it's dried. Now, initially I just wanted to leave it at that with just this blue background, which was also inspired by the original sketch that I did. But I hadn't taken into consideration that I did the other sketch on the white page, and so I decided to add some white lines with a Posca marker. A little tip when working with acrylic markers is to always keep a sheet of paper or a palette or something nearby. You know how you need to push the markers down to make more paint flow to the tip? But sometimes you'll have an explosion and there's way too much paint. So if you want to work precisely, just do that on the side so you'll have a little pool of paint there. And you will see that I also just dip in the Posca pen sometimes to get more paint on the tip without actually pushing it down. So I'm painting around some of these flower shapes, but I'm trying to do it not too much, not everywhere, which is obviously a challenge. And I also try to make these lines a bit more edgy than the flowers, so more graphic, more straight lines, rather than round and organic lines. And what you don't see, because I edited it out, is that a lot of the times while I was doing this, I was pausing and just staring at it for a minute or so to decide if it was already enough or if I should add more lines. It's very easy to go too far, to do too much, I think. Once I was happy with it, I decided to add just a couple of splatters in the top right and in the bottom left corner. Over time, I've found that the best way to do that with the Posca pens is to hit them on something else. For example, another marker or a brush. That way you get sort of the best round splashes. And that's it. I really like how this turned out. I especially love the texture in those brush strokes, the variation of color, and the graphic nature of the entire cover. I want to give a quick shout out to my subscribers. We've just hit the 300 mark, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Every one of your likes, comments and subscribes means so much to me and keeps me motivated to make these weekly videos for you. So thank you very much. Now let's move on to the next sketchbook, which is this A4 Royal Talens sketchbook. In this case, I want the cover to be inspired by this landscape painting I did a little while back during the 30 Days of Watercolor and Beyond challenge. And since I can't keep looking inside of the sketchbook while painting the cover all the time, I decided to just really quickly hold the sketchbook into the scanner and just do a copy. And as you can see, the settings were set in such a way that the copy turned out super dark. Now, obviously I could change them and do another copy, but I actually kind of love how this turned out. It kind of turned this sweet and soft landscape into something really dramatic and kind of spooky. Anyways, I only needed to sort of get the proportions right. So I just grabbed lots of acrylic markers, all the colors that I might want to use. So basically we have all these kind of oranges, beiges, pinks and browns that I want to use for the lower half of the painting. And then here we have all the green hues for the bushes and trees. There's also a really bright blue for the sky and a white for the tree trunks. In case you're wondering about all my acrylic markers, you can check out my video that I made that was all about these markers. Which brands I like, how I use them, and how I mix some of these colors myself. But anyways, I'm basically just starting out by covering the sky in light blue. I knew that I didn't really want any of this green from the sketchbook to poke through, because it's just such an unnatural toxic green that didn't really fit into this landscape painting. And then next I put in the path to have basically blocked in all the basic shapes of this painting. And I'm not too worried about full coverage. I know that I can always go back over it later and put a second layer if I really want it to be fully opaque. And you will see later that with the sky I actually ended up doing that. But sometimes it can also be nice to have texture, like for example in the path. I think this can actually really add to the painting. Then I'm just getting in the tree line in the background with some really dark green first and mixing in some of this Posca green later, which is a bit more saturated. And you can see here that I pump that green one so that a lot of liquid comes out and it can flow into the darker green. So sometimes you can also make use of this specific property of the Posca markers. And then I just continued with this grassy, bushy area down here. And as you can see, I basically just scribble around because I already know I'm going to use my fingers to connect it all together. If you know me, then you know I love using my fingers, and especially when I use acrylic markers. I should maybe just turn finger painting into my niche. Yeah, I just can't help myself. It just happens automatically. Basically, I just wanted to sort of cover this entire grassland area and to have all this variation of greens and browns and oranges and a bit of pink. And you can see that the further in the back it is, the more I'm just doing kind of horizontal lines. Whereas in the foreground, I give the bushes more shape and I make them bigger, all to get some nice depth. And here at the bottom, you can again see me using my splashing technique to create some little pebbles on the path. Now it looks a bit crazy now, but you just gotta believe and let it dry. The great thing about acrylic markers is that you can always cover things up if you don't like something. And this gives you more freedom while painting, I find. And to be fair, I also wanted this painting to be more loose and messy, not too precise. So I let it dry, and then we unfortunately have a very dramatic cut here. My apologies. I basically let this first layer dry, and when I continued to paint, I completely forgot to turn on the camera again. So what did I do in the meantime? Well, at the bottom I added a couple of those turquoise bushes and some pink. And then I added the trees in the foreground, which basically I just made these blobs of green using both a darker and a lighter green. I sort of keep swapping between them quickly, so the wet paint can mix a bit and create these layers of depth. And I did them all using a vertical motion to give the impression that the leaves are sort of hanging down from the branches. And then I used the white Posca for the trunks and a fine black Posca pen to add this tree trunk texture. Basically, I just make a shadow line on the right side of each tree trunk and also of the branches. And then I create all these little horizontal lines and dots that give that typical birch tree texture. You just have to make sure it's a little bit uneven and irregular for it to look real. And then I continued a bit more at the bottom of the landscape. I used this old toothbrush, which I keep with my brushes, because sometimes it can be cool for texture. So here you see, I use it to create some grasses on the side of the path. And also to create some really fine splashes to again add some more pebbles and texture to the path. Then I looked at those trees and I felt that some of them could maybe still have a little bit more contrast to add even more dimension to the leaves. So you can see I'm scratching some black, mostly from the bottom, because, you know, it's shadows and the sun shines from the top. And then going over it again with my green acrylic marker. And then this is where I left it to dry again, thinking, hoping that it was finished. But the next day when I looked at it, I did like it, but I felt like there was a bit of a mismatch between the top half and the bottom half of the painting. Especially this color of the trees. We don't find it back anywhere at the bottom of the landscape. It all got covered up by other colors. And I also felt that the tree line in the left part of the painting was just way too low, and I wanted to raise it up higher. So I just grabbed the acrylic markers again and I fixed those things. And that's it. That's the second sketchbook, and I do quite like how this turned out. I really love this texture of the trees. But I also like this area down here and all the mixing of these colors. I think this works quite well for this kind of organic, natural landscape. And so then let's get to the third cover I painted, the last one, which is this teeny tiny Royal Talens sketchbook. This is the smallest sketchbook they sell. And well, normally I like to work in big sketchbooks. But I've also made it a bit of a habit to always have one of these teeny tiny ones going on too. They are so cheap. I think literally €3 and some cents. And they're the usual amount of pages, so a lot, I think 80, and the usual grade paper. The great thing about this sketchbook is that it's so small that it can fit into your jacket pocket or any purse at all times, and it just feels so freeing to me. Like, I really allow myself to make the most silly, quick sketches in this sketchbook because it's so affordable. I feel no pressure, no perfectionism, and that's why I love it. And since I do rather simple sketches in this sketchbook, I felt that the cover should also reflect that. I mean, the cover should somehow invite you in and inspire you when you open your sketchbook, right? So this cover painting is actually inspired by a little sketch that I have in this sketchbook. You'll see it later at some point. You probably already know who this is, especially if you already know my channel. This is, of course, a sketch of our little Pekingese dog Nala. And all I'm doing is just a line drawing with this black acrylic gouache and nothing more. And I decided to give her a little crown, because I always say that she's our grumpy princess. Well, here in this sketch she's kind of smiling, but that's not really a reflection of reality. So of course this was by far the quickest one I did. I wanted to do a bit of a variation of sketchbook covers to inspire you to paint your own. I think it can be the smallest, simplest thing. It doesn't have to be a whole complicated painting. I mean, just look at that. From now on, when I pick up the sketchbook, I know it will make me smile and inspire me to be silly, experiment and play. And I will always be reminded that that's actually a good thing. I mean, I really love simple illustrations just as much as I love big, intricate paintings. But for some reason, sometimes I forget about that and I have to remind myself. So that's it for today. These are all the 3 sketchbooks that I painted this week. I'm so glad I finally dared to do this. Which one is your favorite? For me, it's really hard to decide. I do like all of them. And I could never rank anything higher than my cute little doggo. But I also really love these flowers. I mean, I've already said it, but I love the colors and the brush strokes here. I think it really works. It's very graphic. But yeah, I also like this landscape. In a way, all 3 of them reflect a different kind of painting style and mood of mine. Sometimes I do more naturalistic things with some more intricate details. And sometimes I would rather do something more graphic and with strong colors. And sometimes I just do really simple, silly line sketches. Have you ever tried painting a sketchbook cover? Or are you feeling inspired too, now that you've watched this? In case you give it a try and you share it on Instagram, please tag me or send me a DM so I can see what you created. Otherwise, let me know what you think down in the comments. and like and subscribe so you never miss out on any of my weekly videos. Stay creative, so long and take care.